In our second segment, we are going to discuss about the political machinations of a certain political party. I can understand if you talk politics or you politicize your issues with other political parties within Pakistan. But when you take the whole country with you and try to undermine the efforts made by or try to put a certain stop to all the efforts that have been made by the caretaker government or the previous government, then a lot of question marks emanate as to what the actuality of your positioning vis-a-vis a political party in Pakistan is concerned. I think in this day and age, we need to rise above petty politics, and we need to think of Pakistan first. We are all Pakistanis, that is what we need to do. And politics comes afterwards, but first is to create a stable environment in Pakistan where everybody can thrive, irrespective of the political party. We've been joined by Usman Chohan, who's a leading economist, political economist, and we are going to discuss some of those that I just discussed with you. Let's begin with the IMF that states that it is looking forward to engaging with the new government on policies to ensure macroeconomic stability and prosperity for all of Pakistan's citizens. This is the quote by IMF. Then we have a statement by a senator from a political party known as PTI, Ali Zafar, who tells reporters that a letter will be sent from the founder of that party to the international leader, international lender rather of that is the IMF, urging it to call for and of course trying to undermine the whole process, the whole negotiations between the IMF and Pakistan that have been going on since some time. Do you feel that this is an attempt, deliberate or otherwise, to jeopardize Pakistan's economy?
It's a very profound question, also a very sensitive one, and as you are above politics and so am I, we can look at it through multiple perspectives. On one hand, it is a call to the IMF that since they put free and fair, they're trying to ask the IMF to think twice, which is something the IMF is not interested in, and it has said so. At a deeper level, there's the question of the odious debt. This is a theory in law and in economics, where you say that if you are under a tyrannical regime, like for example Rhodesia was under white apartheid once upon a time, then the black revolutionaries who freed Zimbabwe were not supposed to pay for what the white government did. It was a theory, but you know what? Zimbabwe decided to pay for it. And this odious debt theory is something that I think probably the people writing the letter didn't think about. It's probably not something the IMF has ever agreed to, but it is a concept in law, and since these days we're seeing so many violations of international law and so many economic inequalities, one does tend to think that we have to take a step back and look at how the world economy is anyways. So there is, although this is a specific incident, we have to think about how the world economy works and what debts we should pay and shouldn't pay, and Pakistan's debt to GDP continues to rise. So there's always that question that, well, do we have to pay? Don't we have to pay? In a broader sense.
I can understand it, but statements like these build a narrative that does not bode well for the country. Anybody who is not Pakistani, who is sitting outside, will think twice before investing, saying, I don't understand why one person is saying this, one political party is saying this, the other is saying this. Also, Mr. Ali Zafar talks about good governance that was needed for working of the country, for giving a loan. Is he, in your point of view, trying to say that good governance cannot be delivered by this upcoming government, or has not been delivered by the caretaker government? And when you are in a process of forming a new government, doesn't this statement come at a very sensitive time?
I think you're absolutely right. And first of all, we have to give a lot of credit to the caretaker government. I think that when we raise this hue and cry about this, we are undermining a good work done by the caretaker government, by all the ministries, as some in particular did an excellent job, including Finance Ministry, Aviation Ministry, Foreign Ministry, etc. A lot of good work has been done, so it's unbecoming to just suggest that it's all nonsense. And actually, the new government will have a big task of continuing what the caretaker. I don't want too many fancy new ideas. We have to stick to this SBA, standard standby agreement.
And we have a new agreement that we have to also look forward to.
Correct. That's correct.
Speaking of those, we know that Pakistan averted default last summer with this short IMF bailout, the SBA, and of course then the continuity of the program that happened. But this program expires in April, and the IMF is all set to come to talk for talks on this new program and on the last tranche that has yet to be given as far as the SBA is concerned.
Correct.
In these days where it is, in my point of view, and I'm sure you agree with me as well, when all parties need to get together for a charter of democracy or a charter of economy, why not prioritize national, international environments and try to, why are you trying to stop any efforts in building a consensus on important issues? Why are you trying to stop economic stability in Pakistan? Why do that when you, at the end of the day, are also Pakistani as much as we are?
Absolutely, and you know what? We're all in this boat together. And we can always look at the analogy with the IMF as the a dealer or a baron that sells a drug, and that drug is credit. It sells credit to distressed towns, and imagine Pakistan is a town, and one person is writing a letter that, oh, don't give any more of this substance to my town. Well, you know what? The whole town suffers. And the fact is that we all have to work to make our town nicer, cleaner, safer, etc. And this is a common responsibility. So I agree with you, and I would also say that there are certain areas of our consciousness that should be kept outside the realm of politics. I believe economics should be one of those, that you should have a long-term vision that should be pursued no matter who is in power.
And there should be a continuity of policy. That is extremely important, like you mentioned as well, that the current government needs to also continue with the same policy that the caretaker government had. That includes the reforms. Speaking of reforms, how important is this whole reform process for stabilizing our economy?
It's extremely important. Now, because we negotiated with the IMF at a time of distress last year, therefore the conditionalities they put were harsh, and people like you and I suffered, and the people in lower classes beneath us suffered even more. So if you negotiate with the IMF from a position of strength, you'll obviously get a better deal. So we have to make sure that things are continued across governments, across society, so that every time there is a need for distress, we do so and we present a unified front, because the IMF is neither our friend nor our enemy. It is just a dealer, and people are out there to buy. That's the job.
Exactly, and on certain terms that we need to agree to as per their demands. During a press briefing that was held early on Friday, Julie Kozak, the head of the communications department of the IMF, said the following. She said that during the tenure of the interim government, the authorities had maintained economic stability. Then she says this has been done through strict adherence to fiscal targets while also protecting the social safety net. It has also been done by maintaining a tight monetary policy stance to control inflation and to continue to build up foreign exchange reserves. She added that we can look forward to working with the new government on policies to ensure macroeconomic stability and prosperity for all of Pakistan's citizens. How important is macroeconomic stability and prosperity for a country like Pakistan, and what needs to be done by Pakistan to ensure that, despite coming into liaison with the IMF?
A fascinating question, because there's two parts. One is, how important is it? The short answer is it's very important, but the thing is, how was it done? It was done through very tight monetary activity. So we have an extraordinary interest rate because our inflation is the highest in Asia, and the fiscal tightness as well. But at the same time, we have borrowed a lot in this government. So what we need to think about is, even if the IMF says good job, we also have the right and the sensibility to examine if we are on the right track. That's our appraisal ourselves, and I think we can always do better. And so right now, you cannot expect business to grow and things to improve without a lower interest rate at some point, especially as the energy prices are easing up. And between you and me, I think that the world economy is coming towards a recession in late 24. This is my personal view.
Okay. Will Pakistan be affected by it?
Pakistan may be positively affected, in fact. It's a plus and a minus. The minus is that exports won't be as hot, but at the same time, energy costs will be lower. And for the common man, exports are good, but lower inflation is a lot better. So I think that the cooling down of the global economy might be a big plus over the next 4 quarters. So there are good signs ahead too, making it easier for the government to make the reforms that it needs to.
All right. Speaking of good signs, bullish momentum was also witnessed at the PSX today. At the end of the day, the index was hovering at 62,815.81, which is an increase of 901 points, or 1.48%. Also, GTCL, PPLS and GPL were trading in the green. There's an improvement in the sentiment. There's investor confidence that we are seeing building because A, of the formation of the government, B, because of the positive statement that the IMF has given of working with the new government. How do you see this positive trend developing? But in spite of this positive trend developing, what are the challenges that you foresee for the new government to undertake?
Good question, and since you framed it in terms of the stock market, as you know, I used to work with equity markets extensively, so we should keep in mind that they are a reflection of sentiment, as you have correctly suggested. So this upswing in the markets is a good sign, and it reflects what people are thinking about the next quarter. So if there's something that were bad to happen, you would see this falling, right? But instead you're seeing it rising. So now it's suggesting, the implication is that the investor community believes, the domestic investor community believes that the government has an easier time that was sought before because stability is being achieved. So in that sense, the main challenge now I think is on the fiscal side, not the monetary side, because the state bank can now start to think about lowering interest rates. That's the beginning and end of it. But on the fiscal side now, I think our expenditures are far too large given the tax effort that is expected. And the IMF always wants the shortcut of squeezing the people wherever you have to, and that particularly includes the middle class and taxpayers. Instead, it has to be more on the expenditure side, and we really have to realize how much public value is being created when our government is so large relative to the value it contributes. So with that, I think expenditure is the big question out of all of the macroeconomic principles if you look a year ahead.
Finally, I'd like to understand, after the 18th Amendment, the provinces have their own autonomy, and the Federation is, of course, overseeing all of that, but does not have as much control on the provinces as it used to have before the 18th Amendment. How important is a cohesive approach for settling issues as far as fiscal discipline is concerned between the Federation and the provinces?
It's a very excellent question. It's the necessary question because the 18th Amendment has not been fully realized, because the ambition of the 18th Amendment was to go down to local government level. But it was barricaded in the middle somewhere, and so you're neither here nor there. And as a result, it's the state, the Federation, that assumes all of these liabilities while passing down such a large award to the provinces. But the provincial level accountability and provincial level governments are, I think, the big gap. And if you ask me personally, I think that our provinces are now getting too large. I mean, one province is larger than Mexico. Really, I mean, and then Mexico has 22 parts, right? So you have to think about how big these are and how bloated they are, and how much of the fiscal award stays in the capitals of these provinces rather than going to the entirety of the province. I would like a strong center with local development outside of the capitals of the provinces, and that will be better for Pakistan in the longer run. So these are big, heavy-duty reforms that need to take place.
All right. Thank you very much, Usman Chohan, to have joined us on this very important issue, that is economic stability and how the government needs to move forward under the current challenges, political and otherwise. Let's come to our last three stories very, very quickly. First is on the ICJ hearing, where different countries have presented their point of view, whether it be Iraq, Iran, Jordan, Japan, and they are on the same consensus that they are favoring Palestine and an end to these hostilities by Israel. Now, the Minister for Law and Justice, Ahmad Irfan Aslam, also presented Pakistan's position at the ongoing advisory proceedings of the International Court of Justice, in this case on legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. This, of course, these proceedings stem from a December 2022 request by the United Nations General Assembly for an advisory option by the ICJ on the legal consequences of Israel's policies and practices in the occupied Palestinian territory. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is India and how Twitter or X has been requested or asked by India to block certain accounts. Now, X has said it has taken down certain accounts and posts following an order by the Indian government, and local media reports say that these are linked to the ongoing protests by the farmers. We all know that the farmers are protesting for their demands. They did before. After a couple of months, there were certain negotiations, there were certain promises made that were not committed till the end, and so the farmers are back on the street and they want to enter New Delhi. The government is trying to stop this one way or the other, and the blocking of these accounts on X might be one of those measures in that regard, so that people get to know less and less of what is the actuality according to that. But X says that these posts will only be blocked within Indian territories, not outside India. So whoever is outside India can, of course, read all that is happening as far as this farmers' protest is concerned. Last, the United States has achieved the first moon landing, ladies and gentlemen, in 50 years. A spacecraft that was built and flown by Texas-based company Intuitive Machines landed near the moon's south pole on Thursday. This was the first touchdown of a US vessel in around 50 years or 5 decades, since the first was achieved by the private. I mean, this also is the first achieved by the private sector. NASA, along with other, of course, companies, have hailed this as a major achievement in its goal of sending a squad of commercially flown aircrafts or spacecrafts on scientific scouting missions to the moon ahead of a planned return of astronauts there later this decade. We see so many science fiction films and TV series, and it's a whole new world out there, as a lot of them say. It's a whole world out there also on the moon and on other surfaces as well, and we will take decades, and I don't know how many decades, to finally decipher what that planet is actually, or even the moon, what is actually about, and what secrets it holds within. And these missions are just one of those missions that will try to decipher that question that all of us have in our minds. Is there other life out there? That and much more. With that, we come to an end of today's Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah on Monday, because it's the weekend. Have a wonderful weekend, and stay safe. Allah Hafiz.